Good evening. As we speak, our nation faces a multitude of challenges. At home, our top priority is to recover objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they moved, their trajectory, and so, I think that if a young Metro don't trust you, gonna shoot you.
Exhaustion, which was misdiagnosed by I'm not going to say what race, what people, doctor, and what hospital, and what media it went to. We know I can't say that. It was a Jewish doctor.
Bad news, Salvatore. We forgot to bring the balloon.
So, see any cops around?
No.
It's like TV from other dimensions has a somewhat looser feel to it.
Yeah, it's got an almost improvisational tone. What about this?
You steal hard, huh? Let's see what you got.
This is my body. Take and
Oh my God! Peter!
He's dead. He's dead, Judas. Let's get the fuck out of here.
Can't you bring him back? Isn't that something you can do?
They shot his fucking head, man! That's not leprosy! Let's go!
Oh my God!
Fucking hell! Everything's over. It's all fucked. I invited them to that dinner, Judas. It was supposed to be me. What the fuck happened?
I don't know, but maybe...
You don't know? Face it. The prophecies were wrong. Someone ratted us out.
No way, man.
It was a setup!
Pretty cool, huh, Morty? Oh,
I thought it was cool.
I don't give a what you think, Jerry.
Next minute, as soon as we drive by, we'd get shot at. Or some days they'd look at us mean and, give us gestures that they didn't want us there. And when I first got there, I noticed a lot of people doing this to me. Fuck you. Fuck you, American. They didn't say fuck you. They were just... And about 4 months into it, my interpreter looks at me and goes, Sergeant Beatty, have patience. Wait, what? Have patience. We hit houses with the wrong address. And then we'd have to apologize because we just kicked your door in, or we just blew your door in, or we just damaged your house at 3 o'clock in the morning.
message is transmitted at the request of the Federal Aviation Administration. An unidentified aircraft has been located near the state of Florida. The aircraft is presumed to be foreign and may pose a threat to those in the area. Florida residents are advised to immediately tune to local media outlets for further developments, as is it not known if this aircraft is a hostile enemy. More updates will follow as information becomes available.
Are those fireworks?
What is
that? You see it, right?
I'm actually, yes,
Okay.
I do see it.
Okay.
It's getting weirder by the second.
I know.
It's like they're sticking around.
We're gonna anybody digging and figure out what that is. Back in a moment.
Are we rolling on that?
What do you think it was? Well, no comment from the Pentagon in regards to the now infamous video of the so-called jellyfish UFO. That video, released last week by journalist Jeremy Corbell, appears to show a UFO flying over an American base in Iraq. News Nation reached out to the Pentagon and asked if officials would confirm the video's authenticity. They told us today that, quote, "We do not comment on the authenticity of alleged DoD material that may have been leaked. The Department of Defense takes the potential unauthorized disclosure of national security information very seriously," end quote.
Save our world. The clock is ticking. Good luck, Commander.
Backdrop, we got a llama. That's all you need.
And you're gonna be in it?
Yeah.
What's your role?
I'm just a nigga with a rocket launcher.
Fear spread across Rome after people felt shaking near the historical site Circus Maximus, but it wasn't an earthquake. It was a Travis Scott concert, and fans jumping so vigorously there that the ground shook to the equivalent of a magnitude 1.3 earthquake. The Circus Maximus has held several concerts this summer, and now people are wondering if it's safe to hold music venues at that ancient site after all that shaking. Wow. You don't want to see the walls come tumbling down during your show, do you? Well,
I'm at the
Hey, who you think winning between Drake and Kendrick?
So I'm signed to Universal, right? Yeah. I've been signed to Universal since I was 17. I haven't got a back end. That means when you turn in an album, they give you payment. I haven't got a back end since 2017, 18. So I done been on the same record label for 13 years, so to say. That record label just folded all of its independent labels and subsidiaries into each other, which means how we was kids, you got Rockefeller, you got Def Jam, you got all these things, none of them exist no more. They fired all the heads of the labels, and if they didn't, they turned them into glorified A&Rs. They cut off 50% of the people who work in all these departments. Most of those people is us, people of color that come from hip-hop and R&B and these other things, right? Then you got record labels opening up IPOs. You got record labels destroying their relationships with TikTok, Spotify, things that pay out artists because they want to start their own shit. So then we getting priced out of our contracts. We getting priced out of our imprints. There are no labels, basically.
Has the Illuminati approached you about sacrificing anyone to make it happen?
All the time.
Okay.
I don't know if you've had this, but I've had people throw millions of dollars in my face to do something I didn't want to do. And you've been on, yeah. Oh, There's a room.
I call it the room with the door behind it. You never get to that door. We always got through the first door, and we were so excited about being in that room that we never looked at the next door.
Stage, that's my brother right here from day one. We used to wake up and, I mean, damn, pause, but like, that's how, I mean.
First and foremost, I'm not getting in the bed. Shouts out to him and what he did. I'm just gonna, if we can, just let's just put the camera a little this way, just so we're not, I don't want my shot to even, I don't want it to come close to the bed.
There is no such thing as a coincidence. The fact that you're watching this video means you are energetically aligned with me and this message. Your thoughts create your reality. But you already knew that, yet you still live a life that you dread.
Excuse me.
That is because when you visualize your dream life, you unconsciously believe that it is unrealistic. Here's a hack.
Something smells good in there. What is that? What did you have to eat? That smells amazing! You gotta let me try.
The idea of the Illuminati has been a fixture in hip-hop for decades. Founded by German philosopher and law professor Johann Adam Weishaupt, the secret society was created in 1776 with Enlightenment elements at its core. Weishaupt's goal was to organize the elites and wealthy as the Bavarian Illuminati and educate them so they could influence political decisions. The Weishaupt Illuminati faded into obscurity a decade after its inception. However, conspiracy theorists have long believed that the society is still fully operational from the shadows. It's been alleged that some of today's most rich, powerful, and influential people are active participants in the modern-day Illuminati. Symbols representing the group include horns, pentagrams, and the Eye of Providence, an image of an eye within a triangle with light around it, found on the $1 bill. The Illuminati became a topic of interest in hip-hop around the 1990s. As more people began to show signs of distrust in the government, the allure of wealth and riches that the Illuminati represented inspired some rappers to gravitate toward the idea of the group. Prodigy is one of the first rappers who early on called attention to the secret society during his verse on LL Cool J's I Shot Ya remix back in 1995. The Illuminati want my mind, soul, and my body, he rapped. A year later, DJ Premier famously sampled those same lyrics in the production of Jay-Z's track The Evils. The late Tupac Shakur both spoke and rapped about it and even recorded a song with Lazy Bone called The Illuminati. During a mid-1990s interview, Pac explained that he learned about the infamous group while he was in jail.
That's why I put the K to it. Because I wanted the niggas is telling me about the Illuminati shit while I'm in jail, right? Like, dollars, right. That's another way to keep yourself esteemed, right? That's another way to keep you unconfident, right? And I'm putting the K because I'm killing that Illuminati shit.
Tupac even switched the word up to Killuminati and named his last solo album, Don Killuminati, The 7-Day Theory. Ironically, the LP came out almost 2 months after Tupac was killed in 1996.
Hey, so have you heard from Suge?
Yes.
How's he holding up?
Well, first of all, I was there that night. I was with Suge.
Oh, you were with him. Okay. Do you have any idea who shot Suge?
I'm pretty sure Suge knows who shot Suge.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
so when he comes out of sedation, I'm sure anybody who gets shot will tell you who shot them, right?
Yeah.
But if the police say nobody shot him, I believe nobody shot him. And if nobody shot him, that's the same nobody that shot Tupac. And if nobody shot Tupac, it's the same nobody that shot MLK. And if nobody shot him, that's the same person that shot Malcolm X too. It's a lot of nobodies out there, and nobody minds if nobody comes up missing, right? That don't bother nobody, does it? Certainly doesn't bother me.
So,
shout outs to the nobodies of the world.
You're predicting this is going to be a nobody situation?
I'm making no predictions whatsoever. I'm saying the police said they arrested the shooters, then said they didn't arrest the shooters. But I was there, so I know that 20 minutes after people were laying down on the ground shot, no police had entered the club yet.
Did Suge do anything to provoke this, or?
Nobody in the world has ever provoked themselves being shot.
That's true.
There's only 2 ways to get shot. Either you believe you're somewhere where a person can't have a gun, therefore making you safe, you know, like an airport or a club that restricts entrance, and a situation where the person already has the gun out and you're standing in front of somebody. Now, if you're an idiot, you can believe this was about Suge Knight, but Suge Knight has been accessible every day of his life for 20 years. We know who it was aimed at. We know whose life he saved, and we know why they won't talk about it. But now the rumor mill would tell you, yeah, see, the same thing Suge was doing to Cat, he was trying to do to Chris. They're forgetting something. Suge has never managed me.
What about the reports that this was gang related, that these were two gang members that thought they did it in spite of Tupac?
If it was gang related, then why didn't it happen thoroughly? You see, there's parts of this story that just don't seem to make sense.
Right.
You're saying it was gang related, so that means somebody's gang was shooting at somebody's gang, and then somebody's gang didn't shoot back. That's your story? That's not really how gang stuff works, is it?
Would get so much further if you would tell us this is the guy who made the decision to do X, Y, Z, A, B, and C, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Or these three guys. Like when you tell us about somebody putting the plant where it shouldn't be.
Right.
Or you tell us about somebody saying, hey, we're going to go do this war regardless of what you think. Or we're going to spend this money.
Falls under the category of they.
Right. Who's they? Who made the decision to say, hey, we're going to spend this much money on the Ukraine instead of feeding people who actually need it? Who's that guy or that girl or that group? Who are they?
It's called the military-industrial complex. And Dwight Eisenhower, who was the general in the commanding general of the Allied forces in World War II, then ran for president. And the day that he left office, January 17th, 1961, my birthday, I was in Washington. 3 days later, I'd watch my uncle take the oath of office. But Eisenhower made the most important speech probably now in American history, where he warned America that if we were not careful, that the military-industrial, this permanent warfare economy and machine that we created would destroy our democracy, would subvert all of the institutions that we've created, would impoverish our country and turn us into a surveillance and security state. And my uncle, he actually tried to make peace with the Soviet Union, but the CIA thwarted him. Alan Dulles thwarted him. And my uncle comes in.
What was the guy's name?
Alan Dulles. He's the guy he was the big villain in American history. He's
Alan
the guy
Dulles. Okay.
who turned the CIA into this, machine for overthrowing democracies and turned it against the American people. And he was, he then lied to my uncle about the Bay of Pigs. My uncle said, why are we going down? Because my uncle comes into office and they said, first thing you need to know is we're about to invade Cuba. It's a secret. We've trained 2,000 Cuban troops. They're armed, they're dangerous, and we're going to send them down and we're going to overthrow Castro. And we're going to need U.S. military support. And my uncle said, I'm not doing that. Why? He said, I don't like that Castro has a communist government, but that's Cuba's business. It's not American business. People can choose their own governments and experiment with them. And we don't have to like them, but we don't have the right to change them. And America's not going to, invade a little tiny country. That's a bad look and be a bully. And he said, Dulles and his Joint Chiefs said, well, don't worry, the troops are going to go over there, and we need to carry them to the Navy, then they'll do all the fighting. And my uncle said, well, Castro's got 200,000, an army of 200,000 men. How are these 2,000 men going to defeat that army? And he said that the CIA lied to him, and they said, we've infiltrated the army. We know that they're going to rise up and turn on Castro as soon as our men land. And my uncle said, well, you're not using the U.S. military. My uncle didn't want to send them, but the CIA said, if you keep these guys here, they're going to cause terrible trouble because they're armed and dangerous. And they're going to consider you a traitor, and they're going to cause a lot of trouble. So my uncle said, you're not going to use the U.S. military. So they got United Fruit, which owned all the sugar cane before Castro had thrown them out, to give them boats to bring those men over. And the men died on the beach or were captured by Castro. And that's when my uncle said, I want to shatter the CIA in 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. And my uncle then, the CIA wanted him to go into Laos. He refused. They wanted him to go to Vietnam. He refused. They wanted him to go to war in '62 with Russia. Instead, he made friends secretly with Khrushchev. They started corresponding with each other, and they both realized that they were surrounded by people who wanted them to go to war. And my uncle kept him out, but then my uncle's killed, almost certainly by the CIA and the military-industrial complex. My father then runs against them. He also gets killed, again, almost certainly by the CIA. The man who actually fired the shots that killed him was a CIA asset, a guy called Eugene Caesar. Lee Harvey Oswald, we now know, was a CIA asset.
Yeah.
And the military-industrial, and we went through all of these traumas. My father's death, Dr. King's death, Malcolm X's death, the Vietnam War, the 9/11, and COVID. Each one pushed us further down the road into a security state, into becoming more a possession of the military. When Mitch McConnell was asked about, why are we spending $113 billion in Ukraine? He said, he said, don't worry about it, because that money is not actually staying in Ukraine. It is going to military contractors. It's just going over, technically going to Ukraine, but we're actually just buying, going to General Dynamics and
other soldiers.
And he said, so it's all American companies, and that's good for our country.
Yeah. And that's
that is their rationale, and they're over there. They're killing Ukrainian kids, so nobody here is going to complain because nobody here is, watching the coffins come home.
Right.
And so it's the perfect war for the military. They get to, re-up their contracts, and those are the people who drive policy in Washington D.C.
So is Mitch McConnell they?
He's part of them.
Okay.
I mean, Joe Biden is they.
Because when you
Joe
say
Biden
when you say the military-industrial complex, I'm still looking for names. Like
Victoria Nuland, Joe Biden, Anthony Blinken. Those are the people who are driving it.
Those three names.
Yeah, those three names.
Okay, so when you get in, Joe Biden will go and you'll fire the other guys. Is that
all of those. I will reorganize the CIA, and we have 800 bases abroad. You know how many the Chinese have? 1.5. The Russians may have 1. I don't know, but we have 800. And each one is just a platform for a new war. And the function of the CIA is to provide the military-industrial complex. My uncle discovered this, with this pipeline of continual new wars, to fuel that. And that money is being paid by the American middle class. That's why we don't have a middle class left in this country.
Thank you very much for joining me today. The United States Senate is now debating an $886 billion defense authorization bill. This is more money than all the other discretionary programs in the federal budget combined.
Best Buy, $742. What? It's a month ago. You better know what the f says, $742.
I'm trying to remember.
How do you not know what you walked into Best Buy and spent $750,000 on?
What was that?
my bread up, done, just done, ho, shut up. Yes, I represent the money gang when I fucking throw my setup. It's only me up in this money game and I'm winning this forever, forever. I put it on forever.
Hi, I'm Bob Lazar. During late 1988 and early 89, I worked on the propulsion systems of extraterrestrial vehicles for the United States government. The hardware and technology I was exposed to should be placed in the proper hands of the scientific community, and it is the right of every person on Earth to know that there is physical evidence which proves that there is life elsewhere and that at least one form of that life has been here. For those of you whose information about me is limited to this video, I'll give you a brief background. I'm a physicist. I have degrees in physics and electronics technology. I worked in a number of scientific programs, some of which require top secret and above top secret security clearances, of which the most easily verifiable is my early 1980s job here at the Los Alamos Mason Physics Facility in Los Alamos, New Mexico. Between December of '88 and April of '89, I worked as a senior staff physicist in what has to be the most secret project in history. My place of work was a facility at an area known as S4 on the Nellis Air Force Range in central Nevada. Area S4 is located approximately 15 miles south of the infamous Area 51 installation at Groom Lake, where the U-2 and SR-71 spy planes were developed. For the duration of my employment at S4, I was paid by the United States Navy. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to segregate the information contained here into two separate parts. The first part will deal with information with which I've had hands-on experience and personal instruction. In other words, not only did I read briefings and not only was I taught the theories of these technologies, but they were demonstrated for me and I know they are true and accurate. Some of the points covered in this first section will be how vast distances of space are traveled by virtue of an intense gravitational field, how this gravitational field is generated, what the power source is and how it functions, and general information about disks and the project at S4. The second part of this will deal with subjects on which I've read supporting information, yet for the most part, I had no other way to corroborate the information or ascertain its accuracy. When we get to part two, it'll be obvious why proof of some of this information could not be conclusive. Some of the points covered in this second section will be information about the beings that brought us this technology, and how these beings have historically interacted with man. I've been prudent in selecting what to expose here, and I think that some of this information should not be made available to the general public. This information is being conveyed to you as it was to me, with the exception that in most cases I've simplified things for those of you with non-scientific and non-technological backgrounds. So let's begin. At the beginning of this first section, I'm going to give you 3 short science lessons, and once you've learned them, you'll not only know more about interstellar travel than almost anyone else in the world, but you'll know the actual method another civilization is used to travel from another star system to the planet Earth. Now, during the course of this, I'm going to have to relate information that I've learned at S4 to information that we're already aware of. And when I say we, I mean the general mainstream scientific community. So as not to waste too much time explaining established scientific facts and theories, when I say we know this or we know that, please feel free to consult any qualified scientist, professor, or science teacher to have them explain my statements to you. One of the most predominantly asked questions is, how is it possible to cross vast expanses of space without exceeding the speed of light? Or how can you travel in reasonable time and economy between points that are light years apart? Now keep in mind that the speed of light is 186,000 miles a second, which translates into roughly 669 million miles an hour. And a light year is the distance traveled in 1 year at the speed of light. Proxima Centauri, which is the star system nearest ours, would take 4 years to reach traveling at the speed of light. So up until now, when we've examined the requirements to travel these distances, we've always had to consider the problems of traveling at a speed near the speed of light. This poses problems with propulsion, navigation, fuel capacities, and even when you consider the effects of acceleration on space-time, which include time dilation, mass increase, lane contraction, and a whole host of other things, it quickly becomes evident that this type of travel would require a level of technology that man has not yet achieved. The truth of the matter is that traveling these distances does require a level of technology that man has not yet achieved. But it has nothing to do with flying in a linear mode near the speed of light. We know that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, so in our universe we've always assumed that the fastest way from point A to B was to travel in a straight line at the speed of light. Well, the fact is that when you're dealing with space-time and you enjoy the capability of generating an intense gravitational field, the fastest way from point A to B is to distort or warp or bend the space-time between point A and B, bringing point A and B closer together. The more intense the gravitational field, the greater the distortion of space-time and the shorter the distance between points A and B. Most of us think of space-time as the void or as nothing. And remember, it wasn't that long ago that man considered the air in our atmosphere to be nothing. Yet with time, we've become aware of the elements and properties of the air and atmosphere. Well, indeed, space-time is an entity, and one of its properties is that it can be distorted or bent by a gravitational field. We know that gravity bends or distorts space-time and light by virtue of the fact that we're able to see stars which we know should be blocked from our view by the sun. Referring to the graphic here, the solid line denotes the position of a star that's located behind the sun, and the dotted line shows its position as viewed from Earth. This is made possible because the sun's gravitational field distorts the space-time and light around the sun, allowing us to view stars which should be hidden from view. We know that gravity distorts time by virtue of the fact that if we take two identical atomic clocks and keep one at sea level and take the other one up to a high altitude, when we bring them both back together, they reflect different times. The difference in this passage of time is caused by the fact that a gravitational field weakens the further you get from the source. So the atomic clock which was taken to the high altitude was exposed to a less powerful gravitational field than the clock which we kept at sea level. The effect of a gravitational field on space-time is something that we've been able to observe, but not to experiment with. This is due to our inability to generate a gravitational field. And up until this point in time, great mass such as a star, planet, or moon was the only source of a discernible gravitational field that we're aware of. So just as the gravitational field around great mass such as a planet distorts space and time, any gravitational field, whether naturally occurring or generated, distorts space and time in a similar manner. Now, the great benefit of generating an intense gravitational field is not only can you turn it on, but you can turn it off. If we refer back to our original illustration of space-time distortion, we can see that when we generate an intense gravitational field, we can distort the space-time and in turn the distance between the point where we are and the point where we want to be. We can then position ourselves at the point where we want to be and then stop generating the gravitational field, allowing space-time to return to its natural form. In this manner, we can travel great distances with little linear movement, and this is how space-time distortion translates into reduced distance. Now back to our original question, how is it possible to cross the vast expanses of space required for interstellar travel without exceeding the speed of light? This is accomplished by generating an intense gravitational field, distorting space-time and allowing you to cross many light years of space in little or no time and without traveling in a linear mode near the speed of light. The next question is, how do you generate a gravitational field? Up until this point in time, I've used the term generate to describe the capability of producing a gravitational field, but since I'm not aware of any way of creating a gravitational field from nothing, a more accurate term might be to access and amplify a gravitational field. And this is what I mean when I use the term generate. To understand how gravity is generated or accessed and amplified, you must first know what gravity is. There are two main theories. The wave theory, which states that gravity is a wave, and the currently accepted theory of gravitons, which are alleged subatomic particles that perform as gravity, which is total nonsense. Well, gravity is a wave, and there are two specific different types of gravity, gravity A and gravity B. Gravity A works on a small or micro scale, while gravity B works on a large or macro scale. We are familiar with gravity B. It is the big gravity wave that holds the Earth as well as the rest of the planets in orbit around the Sun and holds the Moon as well as man-made satellites in orbit around the Earth. We are not familiar with gravity A. It is the small gravity wave which is the major contributory force that holds together the mass that makes up all protons and neutrons. Gravity A is what is currently being labeled as the strong nuclear force in mainstream physics, and gravity A is the wave that you need to access and amplify to enable you to cause space-time distortion for interstellar travel. To keep them straight, just remember that gravity A works on an atomic scale, and gravity B is the big gravity wave that works on a stellar or planetary level. However, don't mistake the size of these waves for their strength, because gravity A is a much stronger force than gravity B. You can momentarily break the gravity B field of the Earth simply by jumping in the air. So this is not an intense gravitational field. Locating gravity A is no problem because it is found in the nucleus of every atom of all matter here on Earth, and all matter anywhere else in our universe. However, accessing gravity A with the naturally occurring elements found on Earth is a big problem. Actually, I'm not aware of any way of accessing the gravity A wave using any Earth elements, whether naturally occurring or synthesized, and here's why. We've already learned that gravity A is the major force that holds together the mass that makes up protons and neutrons. This means the gravity A wave we are trying to access is virtually inaccessible, as it is located within matter, or at least within the matter that we have here on Earth. However, the Earth is not representative of all matter within our universe. The residual matter which remains after the creation of a solar system is totally dependent on the contributing factors which were present during the creation of the solar system. This is true whether you believe that the origin of the universe was an evolutionary event or that a supreme being caused this event to happen. The two main factors which determine what residual matter remains after the creation of a solar system are the amount of electromagnetic energy and the amount of mass present during the solar system's creation. Our solar system has one star, which is our sun, but the majority of solar systems in our Milky Way galaxy are binary and multiple star systems. In fact, many single star systems have stars that are so large that our sun would appear to be a dwarf by comparison. Keeping all this in mind, it should be obvious that a large single star system, binary star system, or multiple star system would have had more of the prerequisite mass and electromagnetic energy present during their creation. This makes it possible for these systems to possess elements which are not native to the Earth. Scientists have long theorized that there are potential combinations of protons and neutrons which should provide stable elements with atomic numbers higher than any which appear in our periodic chart, though none of these heavy elements occur naturally on Earth. 88 of the first 92 elements on the periodic chart occur naturally on Earth. Some heavier elements do occur in trace amounts, but for the most part we synthesize these heavier elements in laboratories. Generally speaking, the stability of these synthesized heavy elements decreases as their atomic number increases, but experiments at the lab for heavy ion research in Germany have shown that this may only be true up to a certain point, as the half-life for element 109 is longer than that of element 108. The point is that our observations and theories are accurate. The fact is that heavier stable elements with higher atomic numbers which have more protons, neutrons, and electrons than any Earth elements do exist. However, up until this point in history, there has been no physical evidence to prove this. But now that proof is here. The most important attribute of these heavier stable elements is that the gravity A wave is so abundant that it actually extends past the perimeter of the atom. These heavier stable elements literally have their own gravity A field around them, in addition to the gravity B field that is native to all elements. No naturally occurring atoms on Earth have enough protons and neutrons for the cumulative gravity A wave to extend past the perimeter of the atom so you can access it. Even though the distance that the gravity A wave extends is infinitesimal, it is accessible, and it has amplitude, wavelength, and frequency just like any other wave in the electromagnetic spectrum. Once you can access the gravity A wave, you can amplify it just like we amplify any other electromagnetic wave. To demonstrate how a wave is amplified, we can use this oscilloscope, and as you can see, it graphically depicts the tone you hear as a wave. As we amplify the tone, you can see that the size or the amplitude of the wave increases, giving us a more powerful version of the same identical wave, and thus the tone sounds louder. In like manner, the gravity A wave is amplified and then focused on the desired destination to cause the space-time distortion required for space travel. This amplified gravity A wave is so powerful that the only naturally occurring source of gravity that could cause space-time to distort this much would be a black hole. This brings us back to our original question. How do you generate a gravitational field? You must have access to an element which is heavy enough for the gravity A wave to extend past the perimeter of the atom. Then you can access and amplify it for space-time distortion. To complete our 3 science lessons, the last question is, what is the power source for this type of travel? Well, for those of you with limited knowledge about power sources, I'm sure you can probably imagine the enormous amount of power required to cause a space-time distortion for this type of travel. After all, we're amplifying a wave that barely extends past the perimeter of an atom until it's large enough to distort vast amounts of space-time. For those of you with extensive knowledge about power sources, I'm sure it's probably even more puzzling as to how it's possible to have a compact, lightweight, onboard power source that can provide this much power. For everyone to understand that, I need to further explain a couple of things we briefly touched upon in the last question. If you remember, I said that for the most part, we synthesize or create heavier elements in accelerators, and their stability decreases as their atomic number increases. So what does this all mean? Well, we synthesize these heavier, unstable elements by using more stable elements as targets in a particle accelerator. We then bombard the target element with various atomic and subatomic particles. At this point, transmutation occurs, making the target element a different, heavier element. This element now has a higher atomic number, as the atomic number simply indicates the number of protons in the nucleus of the atom. So this is what I mean when I say their atomic number increases. What does their stability decreases mean? The length of time which an element exists before it decays determines its stability. Atoms of some elements decay faster than atoms of other elements, so the faster an element decays, the more unstable that element is considered to be. When an atom decays, it releases or radiates subatomic particles and energy, which is the radiation that a Geiger counter detects. As you can see, this Geiger counter is detecting the radiation from this uranium, which literally means that the Geiger counter is sensing the subatomic particles which are being released or radiated as the uranium decays. Those elements in which nuclear radiation can be consistently detected are radioactive elements. These heavy elements, which we synthesize in particle accelerators, are of the radioactive variety, and they decay very rapidly. Since we're only able to make a few atoms of these elements, and because they decay so rapidly, we're not able to observe much about them. This is what I mean when I say their stability decreases. However, there are elements with higher atomic numbers which are stable, even though they don't occur naturally on Earth, and we can synthesize them in particle accelerators. These are the elements in the 114, 115 range which don't appear on our periodic charts. Beyond element 115, the elements become unstable again, and in fact, element 116 decays in fractions of a second. This finally brings us to the power source. The power source is a reactor which uses this element 115 as its fuel. In this reactor, element 115 is used as a target and is bombarded with protons in a small particle accelerator. When a proton plugs into the nucleus of an atom of 115, it increases its atomic number and becomes an atom of element 116, which, remember, decays instantly. What element 116 releases as it decays, or what it radiates, is antimatter. What is antimatter? Antimatter is the exact counterpart of matter, which has a charge and a spin that is in the opposite of all matter. When combined with any matter in our universe, antimatter reacts and completely converts to energy. And remember, the rapid conversion of matter to energy is what we generally call an explosion. To demonstrate the explosive power of antimatter, let's pick a random area where an atomic bomb might explode. Oh, let's say Iraq. And for demonstration purposes, let's say an atomic bomb would explode, for instance, in, Baghdad. Well, if one of our older atomic bombs exploded in Baghdad, the area of total devastation, which is indicated by the red dot on the map, would be approximately 2 miles. This would be caused by a fission reaction in which less than 1% of the nuclear material is converted to energy. Most of you are familiar with the bombs that were dropped on Japan in World War II. This is the same bomb that was dropped on Nagasaki August 9, 1945. About this same time, Dr. Edward Teller, who's known as the father of the hydrogen bomb, figured out that a nuclear fusion bomb was possible. Fusion would release even more energy and cause an even bigger explosion from the same amount of nuclear material. Much to Dr. Teller's dismay, the Japanese surrendered, we never dropped the hydrogen bomb, and Dr. Teller's been in a bad mood ever since. But if a hydrogen bomb containing the same amount of nuclear material as the Nagasaki bomb were to explode in Baghdad, the area of total devastation would be approximately 20 miles. This would be caused by a nuclear fusion reaction, which again, less than 1% of the nuclear material actually converts to energy or explodes. The other 99% of the nuclear material on this type of bomb is dispersed, but is not involved in the actual nuclear fusion reaction. Now, if a bomb was made with the same amount of nuclear material as the Nagasaki bomb, and that material was antimatter, when that bomb exploded in Baghdad, the area of total devastation would include parts of Africa, Europe, and Asia, with the exact area of total devastation being very difficult to calculate. This would be caused by a total annihilation reaction, which is the complete conversion of matter to energy. 100% of the nuclear material in this bomb would explode or convert to energy. We currently have no practical way to harness antimatter into a bomb, and generally speaking, we can only isolate antimatter in a particle accelerator and store it for a short time. This demonstrates the enormous amount of power released when you totally convert matter to energy, which is what happens when antimatter and matter are combined. So back to our power source. Inside the reactor, element 115 is bombarded with a proton, which plugs into the nucleus of the 115 atom and becomes element 116, which immediately decays and releases or radiates small amounts of antimatter. The antimatter is released in a vacuum into a tuned tube, which keeps it from reacting with the matter that surrounds it. It is then directed towards a gaseous matter target at the end of the tube. The matter and antimatter collide and annihilate, totally converting to energy. The heat from this reaction is converted into electrical energy in a near 100% efficient thermoelectric generator. This is a device that converts heat directly into electrical energy. Many of our satellites and space probes use thermoelectric generators, but their efficiency is very, very low. All these actions and reactions inside of the reactor are orchestrated perfectly like a tiny little ballet. And in this manner, the reactor provides an enormous amount of power. So back to our original question. What is the power source that provides the power required for this type of travel? The power source is a reactor which uses element 115 as a fuel and uses a total annihilation reaction to provide the heat which it converts to energy, making it a compact, lightweight, efficient onboard power source. I've got a couple quick comments about element 115 for those of you who are interested. By virtue of the way it's used in the reactor, it depletes very slowly, and only 223 grams of 115, which is just under half a pound, can be utilized for a period of 20 to 30 years. Element 115's melting point is 1740 degrees Celsius. I need to state here that even though I had hands-on experience with element 115, I didn't melt any of it down, and I didn't use any of it for 20 to 30 years to see if it depleted. So we've learned how space-time is distorted by a gravitational field, we've learned how that gravitational field is generated, and we've also learned where you get the power to accomplish all of this. Now it's time to link all we've learned in our science lessons to the vehicle that utilizes all of this technology. And a few years ago, I never thought I'd hear myself say this, but that vehicle is a disk, which is generally referred to as a flying saucer. I had at least partial views of 9 different disks out at Area S4, but the one I'm going to describe to you now is the one in which I not only saw 2 of the 3 interior levels, but I also saw it fully functional in flight. And no, unfortunately, I didn't get to go for a ride in it. This particular disc appeared to be in excellent condition, and because of its sleek appearance, I nicknamed it the Sport Model. The Sport Model is about 16 feet tall and 40 feet in diameter. The exterior skin of the disc is metal, which is the color of unpolished stainless steel. The Sport Model sits on its belly when it's not energized. As you can see, the hatch is located on the upper half of the disc with just the bottom portion of the door wrapping around the center lip of the disc. The interior level of the disc is divided into 3 levels. The lower level is where the 3 gravity amplifiers and amplifier guides are located. These are the things used to amplify and focus the gravity A wave that we learned about in our science lessons. The reactor is located directly above the 3 gravity amplifiers on the center level and is in fact centered between them. The reactor is similar to this half-scale model, The element 115 is machined into triangles like this and is then inserted into the reactor. This piece of element 115 is the source of the gravity A wave as well as the target that is bombarded with protons to release the antimatter, both of which we learned about in our science lessons. The center level of this disk also houses the control consoles and seats, both of which were too small and too low to the floor to be functional for adult human beings. The walls of the center level are all divided into archways. At one point in time, when the disk was energized, one of the archways became transparent and you could see the area outside of it just as if the archway was a window. After the panel had been transparent for a while, a form of writing, which was unlike any alphabetic, scientific, or mathematical symbols I've ever seen, began to appear on the transparent archway. And I was never informed as to how all of this was achieved, not that any of that would have required alien technology. I was never given access to the upper level of the disk, so I can't enlighten you as to what the porthole-like areas are, other than I can assure you that they're not portholes. Now, before I go any further about the disk, I'm going to show you where and under what circumstances I saw it tested. My job in this program was to be part of a back engineering team. Back engineering is the act of taking a finished product and tearing it apart to find out what makes it tick. The goal in this program was to see if the technology of the disk could be duplicated with other materials. When I went to work, I was flown from McCarran Airport in Las Vegas to Area 51, which is a highly secure government base on the Nevada test site. Area 51 is located about 125 miles north of Las Vegas, near the Groom Mountains and the Groom Dry Lake bed. From Area 51, I was bused to an even more highly secure facility located about 15 miles south of Area 51 called S4. S4 is situated at the base of the Papoose Mountains by the Papoose Dry Lake bed. The airspace around S4 is restricted, and if any unwelcome aircraft strays into the outer sector, they radio the pilot and instruct him or her to leave. If that pilot continues and strays into the middle sector, jets will be scrambled to escort the intruding aircraft out. If for any reason whatsoever that aircraft penetrates into the inside sector before jets can be airborne, ground-to-air missiles will neutralize the intruder. The moral of this story is don't try and fly into S4. The S4 installation is built into the mountain and the 9 hangar doors are angled at about 60 degrees. These doors are covered with a sand-textured coating to blend in with the side of the mountain and the desert floor. As you can see in this representation, my ID badge had a white background with one light blue and one dark blue diagonal stripe in the upper left-hand corner. At the bottom of the badge, there were letters and numbers designating various areas, including S4. On my badge, there was a star punch through S4. The back of the ID badge was dark blue with a vertical mag stripe running down one side. The hangar that housed the sport model was like a typical airplane hangar with the exception of the angled doors that I mentioned before. The hangar was equipped with typical tools and extensive electronic equipment. It also had a machine with an X-ray emblem on it and an overhead crane rated at 20,000 pounds. Equipment in this hangar was marked with a black number 41 with a white circle around it. It was outside of this hangar that I saw the sport model tested. Now, when the disk travels near another source of gravity, such as a planet or moon, it doesn't use the same mode of travel that we learned about in our science lessons. When a disk is near another source of gravity, like Earth, the gravity A wave, which propagates outward from the disk, is phase shifted into the gravity B wave, which propagates outward from the Earth, and this creates lift. The gravity amplifiers of the disk can be focused independently, and they are pulsed and do not stay on continuously. When all three of these amplifiers are being used for travel, they're in the delta configuration, and when only one is being used for travel, it's in the omicron configuration. As the intensity of the gravitational field around the disk increases, the distortion of space-time around the disk also increases. And if you could see the space-time distortion, this is how it would look. As you can see, as the output of the gravitational field from the amplifiers becomes more intense, the form of space-time around the disk not only bends upward, but at maximum distortion actually folds over into almost a heart shape around the top of the disk. Now remember, this space-time distortion is taking place 360 degrees around the disk. So if you were looking at the disk from the top, the space-time distortion would be in the shape of a donut. When the gravitational field around the disk is so intense that the space-time distortion around the disk achieves maximum distortion and is folded up into this heart-shaped form, the disk can't be seen from any vantage point, and for all practical purposes is invisible. All you could see would be the sky surrounding it. The program out at Area S4 consisted of 3 projects: Project Galileo, Project Sidekick, and Project Looking Glass. Project Galileo dealt with gravity propulsion and was the source of all the information you've learned in this first section. Project Sidekick dealt with a beam weapon that had a neutron source and was focused by a gravity lens. Project Looking Glass dealt with the physics of seeing back in time. Now, I was not personally involved with the hardware of Project Sidekick or Looking Glass, and those projects are beyond the scope of this video. So this brings us to the end of this first part, in which I'm presenting to you as fact. At this point, we begin our second part, which is a section that contains what I call excerpts from the government Bible. I call it that because, as you can tell from part 1, there's a small segment of the United States government that makes scientific and technological judgments from a knowledge base that is not available to the general public. If the following information is true, the United States government also makes judgments on a historical, philosophical, and even theological level from a knowledge base that is not available to the general public. These are excerpts from some of that information. As part of my indoctrination into the program at S4, I would randomly be taken into a small room which contained a table, a chair, and 120 or so briefings in blue folders. I'd be left there to read for varying amounts of time, usually about half an hour. These briefings contained a wide spectrum of information, mostly relating to aliens and alien technology. These reports appeared to be an overview of alien information which could be used to brief scientists from any field about the scope of the whole project, and not just their specific field of endeavor. The overview of Project Galileo was accurate. I read the overview and later witnessed evidence which proved it to be accurate. So it is possible that scientists involved with other projects could have seen evidence that these other overviews were also accurate, but I can't make that assertion. To me, these reports were simply words on paper. So to keep from saying allegedly and supposedly in every sentence, I'll relay this information to you as I read it, since I've already put this disclaimer on it. This technology that you've learned about thus far was brought here by some alien beings from the Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2 star system. These stars are located in the constellation of Reticulum, which can only be seen from the southern hemisphere. Zeta Reticuli is a binary star system, which means it has 2 stars, and is located approximately 30 light years from Earth. These beings are from Reticulum 4, which is the 4th planet out from Zeta Reticuli 2. This is the way star systems were referred to in these reports. They simply designate the name of the star and the number of planets from the nearest to the furthest from the star. For instance, our Sun was designated as Sol, and the Earth was referred to as Sol 3 because we're the 3rd planet out from the Sun. A day on Reticulum 4 is 90 Earth hours long. The beings are 3 to 4 feet tall and weigh 25 to 50 pounds. They have grayish skin and large heads with almond-shaped wraparound eyes. They have very slight nose, mouth, and ear positions and are hairless. Any dates in the information regarding these beings were written in a 6-digit number which began with 1623. Since I had no idea what the 6-digit number was for the present year, I had no way of calculating when these beings arrived, or at least arrived this time. These beings said that they had been visiting Earth for a long time and presented photographic evidence which they contended was over 10,000 years old. There was an exchange of hardware and information in Central Nevada until 1979, at which time there was a conflict which brought the program to an abrupt halt. The beings left, but were to return at a 1623 date, and I don't know what that date is. With the remaining hardware and information, the U.S. government started the back engineering program. In May of 1987, some scientists took an antimatter reactor to an underground blast facility on the Nevada test site to perform an experiment. Unfortunately for them, their experiment required them to cut the reactor open, which resulted in their deaths. This explosion was explained to others at the test site as a previously unannounced low-yield underground nuke test. I was hired in December of 1988 to replace one of these men. These beings conveyed information about the capability of affecting the human brain to anesthetize the human body. This is done without any physical contact from a remote source. For this anesthesia to be accomplished, the brain has to be in a relaxed state similar to that required for hypnosis. If the brain is subject to any external stimulation like stimulant drugs or loud music, this manipulation of the nervous system is ineffective. These beings said that man was the product of externally corrected evolution. They said that man, as a species, had been genetically altered 65 times. They refer to humans as containers, yet I don't know what we're containers of.
I love you. You set my soul on fire.
As I'm sure you now know, it was impossible for me to corroborate the information in the second section. And obviously, if this information is true, the ramifications are far-reaching, and you don't have to be a nuclear physicist to figure that out. So before I bring this to an end, there are a couple of questions I should address for you. The first one is, how did I get into this program? While working at Los Alamos National Lab in 1982, the local newspaper did a front-page story on a jet car I had built. Coincidentally, Dr. Teller was giving a speech in Los Alamos that same day. We met and had a short chat about the jet car, and I later listened to his speech. I never met Dr. Teller again, but in 1988, when I decided to re-enter the scientific community, I sent him a resume and inquired about a job. Dr. Teller responded by telephone and told me that he was no longer active, but just functioned in a consultant capacity. He gave me the name of a contact to call in Las Vegas. I made that call, and things progressed from there until I got into the program. I never got a chance to ask Dr. Teller if he remembered me from Los Alamos, so I don't know if that was a factor or not. The second question is that if all I've just presented to you is true and the government is keeping this a secret, how can I make a video telling you about it? Well, the bottom line is, if there are any repercussions from making this video, it would simply confirm that what I told you is true. So what you do with this information is up to you. Remember, not everyone who sees a disc in the sky is crazy, so keep your eye on the sky, especially here in Central Nevada, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, I'm getting cake. Yeah, it's no debate. Yeah, I fornicate. Foreign hoes that I date like every day. Hey, yeah, I rock the rap. Yeah, I bought the race. Yeah, I'm out of state. Yeah, I like the race. Yeah.
The important thing isn't can you read music, it's can you hear it. Can you hear the music, Robert?
Yes, I can. Greetings, my friend. You have traveled very far and overcome many obstacles. Along the way, you have encountered many of your diverse, far-flung siblings. Precious few of them will make it this far. Your heroic efforts have proven you deserving, worthy of advancement to the next level of your existence. The universe you inhabit is but one of many, countless worlds, unseen but yet connected. Your creative efforts have not gone unnoticed. Indeed, they have spilled into these other, unseen worlds, just as your world has been enriched by them. It is now time for you to join us. Join us! No, just kidding. It's not scary. Indeed, the times ahead, they're good. Really good. Some of you may ask, who is this mysterious voice who knows so much and possesses such great powers? I'm glad you asked.
Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. For wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the wind blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash.
What is a god? What is it to think of something sacred and larger than us and infinite and boundless? Human history seems to be suffused with this inclination towards a sense of the divine. We want to believe that there is something more. We've wanted to connect with this higher power, with this belief that there's something greater than ourselves, something that exceeds our capacities to understand. And we see gods everywhere, myths and metaphors, old gods, new gods, vengeful gods. They rise and fall with the ebb and flow of all civilization. For ages, humankind, we've wanted to celebrate what brings us life. What is this thing that allowed us to emerge? The sun. The star. That right there is the source of all of our myths and allegories and hopes and dreams. It gave life to the world, gave birth to life. Its core burns at 10 million degrees and it consumes millions of tons of matter per second. We ourselves are made of remnants of its fallen siblings. The preconditions for our humanness, that certainly is what God is, right? Let there be light. It is larger than a million Earths, can blind you from millions of miles away, has reigned for billions of years, and will thrive for billions more. I think that's kind of fascinating.
Say, well, what about George Washington? You know, because he's touted as such a man of integrity. Matter of fact, there's records that he attended church regularly, a Christian church. There's also records that he and his pastor, there's letters that have been written. Matter of fact, Library of Congress is a prime field to be picking truthful pieces of fruit. You want to get fruitful research? Hey, go to the Library of Congress. What we find out is that the pastor, one of Washington's pastors, he said that overall he spoke with Washington time and time again that Washington was a deist. Okay, Washington didn't want to have a problem with the guy. He wanted to continue going to the church because it was a political move. But in reality, Washington said he was a deist. They went back and forth on this matter. This has been documented historically. He was not a Christian. He was definitely a deist. Now, others will argue that Washington renounced the Masonic Lodge. Well, that's only a half-truth. Okay, he renounced the British Lodge. See, when he came over and started setting things up, like in this new era, if you will, he had to renounce the old to become part of the new. And so he was actually part of the Alexandrian Lodge. I forget the exact number of the lodge, but if you Google this, you're going to find out exactly which lodge Washington was a part of in Virginia. I think it might have been Lodge 122, but I forget. I don't want to quote that, but he renounced the British, joined on with the current lodge that was setting up in the New World. They were two separate systems. Now, they were very similar, but they were separate. Matter of fact, their idea was to come and set up a government here that was almost identical to the oligarchy that they left. See, most people don't realize that. They don't realize that Washington was part of a grand conspiracy to create basically a new oligarchy here, a government controlled by a few. And that's all historical. We document that in our film. But the idea was to set that up, but to give more freedoms. But it still allowed the elite to run everything that the government wants. any move of the government, the elite were going to be involved. They were not going to allow the common man to make decisions. Matter of fact, when the Constitution and some of the founding documents were signed, those windows were locked. You know, Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis from the Pentagon, he came on record and he talked to us about this for the film. He points to the fact that the founding fathers were deep state, which we would call shadow government. Back to Washington. Washington was definitely a Freemason. Matter of fact, they cast sprigs of acacia at his Masonic funeral to signify him going on to the land of Osiris in the underworld. Now, they believed Osiris was already in the underworld, and they believed that Washington was the America's first Osiris, but he wasn't meant to be the final. He was meant to be a type. And we see that in how they went down and went through with his funeral. As a matter of fact, if you go back and study the death and the funerals of Washington, you're going to find out that there were two. You had two different eulogies. You want to look for the Masonic eulogy that was presented by Timothy Bigelow Jr. That literally paints the picture. Look, Washington was not just a porch mason. Okay, he knew what he was doing. He was very much invested in this. We have evidence that not only was he a Mason, but he was a Mason in good standing all the way up until his death. A lot of people say he renounced the lodge. Again, he did, but it was the British lodge, not the American lodge. What's crazy about this is that he was literally being set up in a system that was a religious system that was set up to bring about the spirit of Osiris. A resurrected spirit, a reincarnated spirit, if you will, of Osiris to possess the ruler of this nation. Washington never made it to the crypt. They did not put him in the crypt that they built for him because we believe they didn't build it for him. They said they did, but it's kind of like the government says that they're building, these military bases, and then immediately they retire the military base after they build it because they had other plans for it. The government does this all the time. They set up the crypt of Washington. They installed it very much strategically, which we break down all the strategy involved here. The crypt of Washington is sitting at the basement level of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. This is literally a page out of ancient Egyptian magic. We break this down step by step by step in the film. We show everything, how you go up and you walk into the Capitol building. You look up and what do you see in the dome? You see this thing called the apotheosis of George Washington. Now, if he really was a Christian like so many people say, all you gotta do is look up and see the heaven that George Washington is ascending into, which is painted on this massive mural, and he's surrounded by all the pagan gods. You say, well, why on earth, if Washington was a Christian, why would he be getting deified in the first place into a god? That's what the word apotheosis means. Literally, Washington becoming a god. Walt Whitman, the famous American poet, said that George Washington was becoming the Osiris. Now, pagan gods, what does this have to do with DC? Well, Thomas Jefferson literally designed the city to honor the old pantheon of pagan gods. This is on record at the Library of Congress. People can investigate what's called the most approved plan. They literally built this city to pull a line from the Ghostbusters, how they talk about drawing down the power on these certain buildings, cursed buildings that are set up for drawing down occult power. The city of DC literally was built as a massive ritualistic chessboard to do public rituals en masse. So the Washington Monument, people like to go and look at it. Everybody wants to see it, but they don't understand the history of it. But just the measurements alone should be enough to raise some question. It's 555 feet tall above ground, and the physics involved, in order to keep it from falling over, you have 111 feet inside the earth. So you're ending up with a totality of 666 feet total from tip to base inside the earth. But what's crazy about this is that in the base of it, they have inculcated the magic Apollonian square. Now, they believe that this square has a binding factor to it, that it can bind certain things. Some people call it a 666 square. We do a full breakdown of this in the film, and the 666 square, basically what you end up with is that no matter how you add up the numbers in any of the lines, you end up with 111, with a total number of 666. So what's crazy is that they believe it's a binding utility, but it also goes back to some prophecies about the resurrection of Apollo. Now, the same entity that we would call Apollo, others call Osiris. So there's a connection there. Apollo and Osiris are the same entity. It's just from two different parts of the world. People can go back and look into the Sibylline prophecies. They can understand that this is a very real connection. The Masonic Lodge has that same 666 square in the skylight of their ritual chamber, which we show in the film, surrounded by the 33rd degree Freemasonic emblems of ISIS. And what's crazy is that directly beneath that 666 square, you have their altar with the holy books, including the Bible. They believe that by putting the Bible underneath this square, that it's binding the power and influence of the Word of God. But it doesn't stop there. There's a secret Bible bound in the testes of the Washington Monument. This Bible was what Dan Brown called the lost symbol. See, people have no idea how these books and this pop culture, such as Dan Brown and others, how they're conditioning us to what's really going on. They're pre-programming us to accept these things. The Dan Brown lost symbol was a Bible, a Masonic Bible, that's bound in the testes of the Washington Monument beneath a 12-foot mini obelisk. Most people don't even know about the 12-foot mini obelisk. We were able to get photos from when they did some renovation work over there. Matter of fact, Atlas Obscura got their hands on the photos, and that's where we first heard about the 12-foot obelisk. No one else knew about it. If you look down at the base of the main obelisk, you have what looks like a sewage hole, a manhole with a metal cover. You pull that thing up, which you can't, but they did, and we got footage of all of this. They pulled it up, and sure enough, you've got a 12-foot mini obelisk. 12 is a mockery of the number of disciples of Jesus Christ. It's also in the occult world, that's the number of the perfect government that they believe that's going to be set up in the Novus Ordo Seclorum. Now, what is the Novus Ordo Seclorum? That is Latin for the new order of the ages. Anybody that carries around a dollar bill in their pocket, pull it out, you'll see the pyramid, you'll see the Novus Ordo Seclorum. That was what this was all about. The founders of this nation knew that this was the land prophesied by the old mystics. They wanted to resurrect their old gods right here on this land, and they knew for a fact that this would be the continent that was going to lead the world in this Novus Ordo Seclorum. I definitely believe that rituals are utilized to obtain technology. You know, we do a whole breakdown in our film Hollow Earth Chronicles about how the Nazis had this secret group of women known as the Vril Maidens, and they would embark on seances, and in those seances they would begin to automatic write, and they would get information in other languages. Matter of fact, the blueprints given to the Nazis did not for the bell. The Nazis had this craft called the bell, or the Die Glocke. That information did not just get given to one person. It actually got given in two separate events in two separate languages. It was years later that they decoded those languages and realized it was all one document, and it was the blueprints for what they believed to be some type of a time machine UFO. Some believe it was a time machine, some believe it was just a flying craft. But yeah, I believe the technology is oftentimes given through satanic rituals and seances. But what I see more is the power and the atmospheric shifts that are taking place through these rituals that are changing the course of the direction of America.
Bohemian Grove has the massive ritual that takes place out there on a yearly basis. And this was blown open by Alex Jones. I'm sure a lot of your viewers have seen the dark secrets inside Bohemian Grove. We use a little clip documenting his interview with David Gergen. We chose the David Gergen Street interview to validate, to show that Bohemian Grove is real, to show the secrecy involved in the participants that are members there, and also to show that the ritual is in fact true, that people participate in this, and this is precedents from times past. You know, this is going back to late 1800s, early 1900s. We have in the film we have a whole bunch of images, of pictures that were photographs that were taken, and it shows this ritual and the different things and practices that took place out there. But to go back to your question about the rituals, the big one that they do there on a yearly basis is the cremation of care. And there's a big giant stone owl out there. And it's very, the only way I can describe it is that it's a high place. It's equivalent to a high place of the Old Testament. It's literally, you're in the groves, you've got your altar set up, sacrifices being done there, And I'm not here to say if it's mock sacrifice or if it's real. I personally believe that it would be real if you're getting the leaders of the world to come out on a yearly basis to go there and to participate in this. I would think that it would be real. Also because of with it being truly satanic and Luciferian and fulfilling those esoteric belief systems, it would only make sense. Blood is required in high-level rituals to be able to engage the other side. So it would only make sense that they're truly doing rituals out there. But that's the reason we went to Bohemian Grove in the film, is not physically, but why we covered that topic is just because that's it's an encompassing of your secret societies, your occult systems, but it also shows that the higher ups, the people that are making policy, not just in America, but for the world, they meet out there and they do these things.
There's a very strange ritual that dates back to ancient Egypt, known as the Osiris Rising or the Rising of Osiris ritual. You'll see it listed in different names on the internet probably. Osiris, he had a conspirator named Set, and Set wanted to do away with Osiris. So he had him cut up into 14 pieces. Now his body's cut up into 14 pieces, it gets thrown into the Nile River, and Isis, of course, isn't happy about this. Isis tries to collect all the pieces up, and she's only able to find 13 pieces. So she fashions together those 13 pieces to form a more perfect union, which is the framework of our 13 colonies, a more perfect union, based off of the myth of Osiris. Now that's showing Egyptian magic even in the framework and the fabric of our foundation, right? It's not an accident that they brought together 13 colonies to form a more perfect union. That was all by design. It was all manufactured. But what's crazy is that she fashions together these 13 pieces, but guess what piece is missing? His genitals. So what do? They set up this ritual. That's what the obelisk is, by the way. The obelisk represents the 14th piece that they couldn't find. It is literally a phallic symbol. You find it in the Vatican, you find it in ancient Egypt, you find it here in the States, you find it all over cemeteries, you find it all over the Masonic lodges. It represents the phallic, the male sex organ of Osiris. And they believe by setting up this ritual, now it's all a recreation of the original ritual that took place between Isis and the 13 pieces of Osiris, which we break down the full ritual in the film. Tom Horn breaks it down right there in the mall area of DC, right between the Washington Monument and the Dome of Isis, which is the Capitol building. Now this is fascinating because the original ritual had to take place between in a courtyard, between a dome and an obelisk. Putting those two together like that creates a power generator, literally a generator for this ritual. And the idea is that the seed of Osiris, the seed, is going to come up and emit out of the phallic symbol, which is the Washington Monument, and it's going to take over whoever our president is. Now this sounds crazy, but think about this. In ancient Egypt, what had happened was the Pharaoh would go through this ritual, he would enter in a man, and he would exit the ritual a god. That was their belief, and they believed that their Pharaoh was literally the embodiment of Osiris because of that ritual. They were calling him up out of the underworld. So what we have in America is this same ritual basically that the Freemasons believe that they have maintained the proper language and the ritual to a T from the ancient world. They claim to have this still today at the inauguration of every US president. The president is up there, right there between the dome and the obelisk, right there in that power generator, and right around the corner at the Herodome, which is what they call the Masonic Mecca of the world, literally. The Herodome is this temple, this massive, crazy temple in DC. They are up there beneath that magic square we were talking about, that magic 666 square, binding the influence and the power of the Word of God. They believe they're binding the power of the Bible while they do this ritual, and they are literally doing the raising of Osiris ritual while the presidential inauguration happens at every election. And they are literally calling on the spirit of Osiris to raise up, or Apollo, however you want to slice it, to come out of the underworld and to possess the president. So the president-elect walks into this ritual a man, exits the ritual a god. This is what the Freemasons believe. Now, people are going to say, well, not every president's a Freemason. Well, most of them have ties to secret societies, but they're not all conscious of the ritual. Doesn't matter. This ritual takes place every inauguration. The Freemasons hold to this. Here's one thing I want to point out about this. The ritual that takes place there, it's been going on now since the beginning, to our knowledge, since the beginning of this nation being set up. They believe that it's going to stick eventually. See, they don't know which president is going to be the final Osiris. Now, they believed in the foundation of this nation that Washington was a type. He was the first Osiris. Technically, every president in their eyes is an Osiris, but the crazy thing is that not every time the ritual is going to stick. They have to keep doing it until it actually sticks and they get that one that they've been waiting for. This is kind of like when we talk about Babylon working. You know, how many years, was Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard working in the desert trying to get this ritual to stick? They do this at the inauguration of every U.S. president because they believe there is going to come a time in a president that will be the one. He will be the one, and they will go through this ritual when his body lies in state in the Capitol Dome. I believe they're going to do this ritual, and that final raising ritual, that's going to be the one that's going to stick. I don't believe it's going to stick when they're doing it at an inauguration. The real one's going to take place when this Antichrist man dies. They lay him in state in the Capitol building beneath the 72 pentagrams and the apotheosis of George Washington. And that's not it. There's so much more numerology about the Capitol building and the 13 statues and the statutory hall. But I believe that's the real ritual. That's the one where he's going to raise, where the spirit of Osiris, which the Bible talks about this Apollyon coming up from the bottomless pit.
When you visit DC, it feels like you're walking through Rome with all the architecture and all the pagan idols and the statues, the monuments, even down to, and Justin mentioned this about the Roman Pantheon being recreated and shepherded by Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson wanted to see reconstructed pagan temples to the old gods. He wanted that to be what you see. That's when you're walking down DC, this is what you're going to see, and he was successful in that. Being raised to think that America was built as a Christian nation, you would expect to see crosses. You would expect to see statues of apostles. I don't know. That's just what I have in my mind. If you're going to go, you're going to see some representation of that, and you don't see any of that there. Like, it really feels like you're walking in Rome, because you've got all of the structures that are there and the statues of the deities and what have you. And so with DC, it was set up specifically for that purpose, to pay homage to these pagan gods and goddesses. That should be a red flag for many people. But to look at the structure of it, the way that they set up things on purpose, you can look at it, and everybody knows about the pentagrams, and a lot of people will look down and say, even with the pentagram that's on the street layout, they'll look at it and they'll say, oh, well, it's not a complete pentagram because it's missing a leg. Well, if you do any research on that, you'll actually find out that that's even a more powerful pentagram in the occult than a completed one is. So with that set up there, with the whole the layout of the streets and the roads and the buildings being charged, being set up for the pagan gods and goddesses, it's done for a specific purpose, to be able to harness power and give direction. The purpose behind it is actually for rituals, for ritual purposes, to be able to harness the power of Osiris, for example, as we've talked about with the inauguration of every U.S. president, and calling down that, or calling up the seat of Osiris to allow the government to have a divine representation. And that goes all the way back to the Pharaoh in Egypt.
Interesting. I had somebody send me a video of lightning striking the Washington Monument just here recently. It was a big deal. I don't think it did any damage. I don't know. I didn't really look into it. But the video that I saw, and I suggest everybody look into this. Look at the video of the recent Washington Monument getting struck by lightning. That's what they're calling it, by the way. All I could think about was, this looks like a massive ritual is happening right now. Like, this doesn't just look like lightning striking something. This looks like some Ghostbusters satanic ritual taking place, drawing down the power. I'm not saying that's what was going on, but that's the first thing that crossed my mind as I saw this video footage. So I think that it's possible that, everything going on right now, we're really starting to reevaluate how things are going to look in the end times because of all the things happening, all the propaganda going on right now with this whole coronavirus scare. It's changing the way that we're seeing some of these things. So I don't know for sure how it's going to look. But the best thing I could say is that it lines up with Scripture. It might appear a little bit different. We're going to see things more clearly as the days unfold. As a matter of fact, I've said this before, 100 years ago, the best Bible scholars could not have seen the type of prophecy being fulfilled that we're seeing today. They wouldn't have understood it. Like, we understand prophecy better now because we've seen so much more unfold. So I think as we get closer, we're going to recognize that. But it's all stepping towards the New World Order. They want the New World Order, and the New World Order is actually seen as a good thing in their eyes. They see it as spreading the democratic commonwealth everywhere. They see it as bringing about that old form of supernatural government in the occult world and setting that up for the New World so that we can all live under this new Atlantis. That's literally the goal that we're heading towards.
The end goal of all this is to bring about this final world system of the Antichrist so that he can reign. We talk about globalization in the film, and we interviewed someone that was part of the United Federalists, and he's an independent. He's a strong believer. Carl Teichrib, love him to death, and he talks about an experience that he had going to a UN meeting as an independent of the World Federalists, and they were handed this book, this little booklet, and it talked about the need for a world king. How do you look at that? It sounds very familiar and reminiscent of the Antichrist, a world king, a world dictator. I think the things that we're seeing today is setting the stage for that. As we document in Belly of the Beast, they're having to implode America from the inside in order to bring it down so that they can have a global agenda being fulfilled, so that order out of chaos. There's all these things that we're seeing being fulfilled today. It's because of these people following the orders that they get from their rituals, using the power that they've obtained to be able to bring this about. They're hell-bent on seeing this come to pass. And the end deal, if you look at what the Bible says about it, we're living in these times. Matthew 24 is even more applicable today than it was when it was written. The book of Revelation, same thing, all of it really. It's more applicable today, and it's necessary that we're standing strong in that, standing steadfast in it. Because without it, what hope do we have? Without it, it's going to be like the people taking a knee to Baal. They're going to see this supernatural world king come in, who's going to be filled with the spirit of Satan, literally embodied inside of this human being. So he's going to be doing lying signs and wonders. He's going to have the answers that everybody needs to bring peace in. And the way that you do that is you have to have this problem. This is the Hegelian dialectic. You have this solution that you want to get to. So you create a problem, get the people to react and say, hey, we need to go. Somebody needs to do something about this. And so they'll gladly accept what the end is. They'll gladly accept this next solution, kind of like let's use it with the police system right now. Well, we need to defund the police. We really need to go do something about this. Okay, well, we've actually got this new police set up over here, and so they've got these new laws and guidelines. We've gone through it with a fine-tooth comb. So here, take this new police. Well, that's also part of this one world system that we've been looking at for a long time. What we can expect is a one world currency. We're seeing the economic system just go to crap because middle class or middle America has not been able to work. We're seeing the implosion of the dollar take place right now because of middle class America not being able to work and provide for themselves. We're seeing people being more dependent on the government to give them help. The elitists, they've already got all the money in the world, so they're sitting back just watching it go to hell.
The first thing I think that people need to take away is that we've been lied to. A lot of people get offended when you start talking about these types of issues. In Proverbs, it says, a fool is going to discount a topic without looking into it. And that's what I see in America. I see a lot of Americans, and they're just quick to discount things, write you off without even looking into it. Those people who refuse the truth, they're going to be given over to a reprobate mind. They're going to be deceived. And I tell people, you don't have to be deceived. We're living in an age of technology. We're living in an age of information. We can just go to the Library of Congress. We can just go research these things. And so I tell people, take from this film real information, let it change your paradigm if need be, and move forward without having scales on your eyes. Look, we don't know how much time we have on this earth, but we do know that Jesus is going to return. When he does, we need to make sure that we're in good standing with him. We need to make sure that we are not deceived by this global scheme of the Antichrist. So a film like this is going to allow people to literally wake up from their slumber. I can't tell you how many people write us and say, man, that film changed my life. That film literally changed my whole paradigm, my whole view of America, my whole view of security in the government's hands. We've been deceived. So a film like this really empowers the individual to stand fully trusting on the word of God, not trusting in the schemes of man, the governments of man, and the security of man. Look, there's never been a more important and prime time to wake up to this information. We recommend that people take this information to the church, take this information to your friends, the unbelieving world. It doesn't matter. This film is for everybody. And people who don't live in America, they need to see this film too, because this is going to affect them in the years to come. So the takeaway here is this is a single, standalone film that literally, in my opinion, this is the most important standalone film that anybody could watch at this point.
Because the danger is this rogue group have technologies. We don't have time to go into it, but whatever you think, and this is what Ben Rich, the head of the Lockheed Skunk Works, this super secret contractor for Lockheed, said on the week before he died to a member of our team, James Goodall, a very famous aerospace illustrator, historian. He said, anything you have seen on Star Trek and can imagine, we've already done at the Lockheed Skunk Works, and it's not out at Area 51. It's out in the desert of California.
Really?
There.
To change the weather?
So now, if all those technologies were looked at and applied towards healing diseases, fixing the biosphere, eliminating poverty, et cetera, and so on, we'd have a new civilization. But if they're used only for targeting and aggressive approaches to the extraterrestrials, we could be looking at an extinction level event on this planet.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. Motherfucker.
Whoa, what?
What's happening?
How did we fall asleep during Interdimensional Cable?
Yeah, what the hell, Summer?
Summer, you dumb
How long
bitch.
were we
How
out?
much of Interdimensional Cable did we miss, Summer, you stupid bitch? Why did you let us fall asleep, you dumb bitch? All right, Morty, this noise. Let's get out of here and go on a classic Rick and Morty adventure.
Yeah, all right, Rick, come all in.